class number 3 at Green Springs Dispensary in Hot Springs, Arkansas, cooking on high. Cook on high until done. Cooking on high is a Netflix show. Different puns every week. All right, so this week we are going to be focusing on making a olive oil and making an infused olive oil. Then we're going to make a pesto with it with some fresh basil, spinach, all that, and then we're going to turn that pesto into a little appetizer, caprese bite. So, a little toasted mozzarella, pesto, tomato, just tasty. All right, so first thing is, as we start most classes, is with the decarbing. Decarbing is a very important step. While you can, as was just mentioned earlier, you can just grind up your product, throw it in your brownies, whatever, and cook it off. That does work. It doesn't yield the best results, but it does work. It's kind of like if you had a head of lettuce and you were trying to wash it, right? You can just take the whole head and just stick it under the faucet, shake it out, and that should get most of the sediment off there. Or, cut off the bottom, let it drain. Or you de-leaf it and you wash each leaf, rinse it individually. That's kind of what we're doing with decarbing. We're just ensuring that we get the result we want. In the decarb method, for those of you playing along at home that don't know, decarbing is the process, or decarboxylation is the process of heating your THC, or in this case your CBD, because we're using hemp because, legal stuff. And it's the process of heating it and making it bioavailable or active, because in its just dry, cured form, like we have here, if you were to eat some of it or rub it on your arm or whatever, it wouldn't really do much. But because the THC and the CBD are bound to an acid molecule making CBDA or THCA, so you have to heat that to evaporate that molecule and make it available. So that's what the decarb is for. That's why it's such an important step. First step of decarbing, get some parchment paper, crumple it up, and then stretch it out a little bit. The reason you want to do that is we're going to be decarbing in an oven, and so we don't want to burn our product, our flour product. We want to, basically we want to get hit by the heat, but we don't want anything to get overly toasted or anything of that nature. So normally this is a figure today, because we've kind of stepped through this in the last couple of classes, but what you're wanting to do, the hemp that I have today, I ordered some, here we go, we've got some Hawaiian Haze, and these are some nice small buds. The great thing about using CBD is it's so cheap. You can get an ounce from most online retailers for around $60. We are not currently selling hemp flour just yet, but we're working on it. So hopefully soon, Green Springs will also be able, so you can kind of be a one-stop shop. But right now, there's a lot of good places on the internet you can order stuff from. Personally, I get it from these guys in Oregon, Tweedle Farms. They got good products. But the smalls here, yeah, $60 for an ounce, very inexpensive. And you want to break these down into little, about Skittle size, like half Skittle size pieces. Now this looks a little toasty already because I went ahead and toasted it off ahead of time. And but let's just pretend that I had not taken that step. And what we're going to do is spread it out nice and evenly on our tray, cover it with some foil. We're also going to take our oven. So here's something important. With the decarb process, if you're going to be doing THC or cannabis, you need to decarb at about between 220 and 240 degrees for approximately 20 to 30 minutes. If you're decarbing hemp, however, the CBD decarbs at a much higher temperature, so you want to do that at about 280 degrees for 30 to 40 minutes. Now, because I'm using a little toaster oven, I'm going to set the temperature just a little bit lower because, toaster oven, smaller cavity, the heat's going to hit it, be much more intense, much faster. So for this one, I'm going to turn on the little convection feature. And we're going to turn this down to about 250 and start it there. Yes, sir.
We found that with our coconut oil stuff that's infused,
Yes.
I like it liquid so I can,
Yeah.
measure it instead of eating solid.
Sure.
Never heat it up in the microwave.
Right.
Kill the THC in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
And your CBD goes up considerably, I guess, but THC just...
Yeah, microwaves, bad thing. Like always, if you are, so in today's, actually speaking of, coconut oil, that's definitely one of the prime thing, one of the better oils to use because of its high fat content. The hemp and marijuana need fat cells to bind to, so whatever you're infusing, we did honey last week and we actually mixed a little bit of coconut oil into the honey to give it that fat content. Or if you know a beekeeper, just get some raw, as like unfiltered as he can get it to you, just pick the wings and the legs out, and just that real raw. It's got the pollen, it's got fat from the paraffin, from the hive and everything. That's the real good stuff, and that will bind. That'll work real well. If you can't get a hold of that, just get a little coconut oil, mix it in there, and that will supply the fat content for your honey. Anyway, but I digress.
260 to 280 on the oven temp for decarbing hemp?
For decarbing hemp, yes, sir. Yeah. And for about 40 to 50 minutes is the sweet spot. So, just pop it in there, let it go.
Was it for the sativa at the same time?
No, if you're doing cannabis,
220 to 240.
yeah, if you're doing cannabis, 220 to 240 for about 20 to 30 minutes. That seems to be the optimal window there. So obviously, if you're using a big home oven, set it to 240 degrees and 280 degrees, respectively for the cannabis and the hemp. Using something smaller like I am, toaster oven, go ahead and kick that temperature down a little bit because the heat's going to be much more intense and you could accidentally overcook your product.
And it may explode.
Only if you got a Hamilton Beach toaster, apparently. We had one of our things exploded last week while we were heating it up because we were doing granola. Anyways, so through the magic of television, bam, as I said. But yeah, let's just pretend 50 minutes just elapsed there. I decarbed this last night just to sort of streamline the process for us today. But, so, as I said, your buds should look, something about like this, a little toasty, but otherwise not bad. The method that we're going to use today, let's see where I put that jar, is the crock pot method. So this is kind of a cool method. I like it. It's all self-contained, and most importantly, it uses the mason jars that have begun taking over my house since me and my wife moved to the country and found that there were fruit trees back there. We have so many mason jars, so many. But they're pretty useful things. So, great thing is, so you get your mason jar and get some of that just like 50-cent pantyhose from Walmart. It's great. Before we were using cheesecloth and rubber bands, and anyone who was here at one of these earlier classes can tell you it was a little difficult. So, in previous classes, I had told you guys, make sure you use a larger jar. Like when you're straining your product off, make sure you use a larger jar than you think you're going to need, because it takes a while for the product and everything to strain through. And so if you're, like, let's say you're straining off a honey or an oil or something like that, if you're trying to strain into something like this, well, the bag's like down in your product, and this is good for infusing, but when you're straining off, always go bigger on your containers. It's just gonna make your life a lot easier. All right, so.
When you say go bigger, you're trying to get more distance between the bottom of the sock and the...
Yeah, and I'll kind of just, we'll sort of illustrate that here in a moment, because I've got a bigger jar sitting in the crock pot right now. So, got that. We're going to measure out. So today I'm actually going to do a blend of olive oil and coconut oil. The reason that I'm doing this for this particular application, but normally, olive oil's got a high enough fat content, you shouldn't have to worry. I'm cutting it with coconut oil because I'd rather use that than canola oil. If you're doing salad dressings or pestos, things like that, using straight olive oil can be kind of overwhelming and overbearing. A lot of people, this is something I just stopped telling people at, early on, a long time ago in the restaurants, like, oh yeah, well, we use extra virgin olive oil, this and that. Well, if you use extra virgin olive oil exclusively, it's that woody flavor is going to come through and it's going to overtake the dish. So you want to use a blend. So we're using a neutral flavored oil, some liquid coconut oil, better than vegetable oil or canola oil, right? And it's this stuff filtered, processed so that it doesn't have that coconut flavor. So hopefully, you don't have that kind of messing things up. So I'm going to fill this. We're going to go about half and half with this. This is one of my favorite measuring cups. You'll see why here in just a moment. It's like a little plunger. Basically, it's great for work. Anytime you got to work with oil, honey, anything that's sticky, and doesn't want to really fully pour out of the cup.
What are those called?
These?
Yeah.
It's like a plunger base. It's like a plunger measuring cup. We were talking about last week, and I did not look up the exact name like I was going to. That's what I was going to. Bam. Okay. The other important thing, it's really good to get some kind of basically scientific type cooking equipment when you're doing this so that you can precisely measure and dose. You know exactly what you're working with. I would highly recommend any cookware from Alton Brown. Not just because I'm a fanboy, but because his stuff's really good. It's good for getting exact amounts and measuring things out, which is really important for cooking with cannabis. We've all
You said Alton Brown?
Alton Brown, yeah, the Food Network chef. All right, so we've got our jar with our product in it, firmly submerged. So now we've got our crock pot here with water, and anybody that wants to come have a look at that, you're welcome. So what you do is you take your crock pot, fill it up with water, right up to the line where the oil is going to be in the jar. That way it has kind of a neutral buoyancy and it heats it thoroughly. And that's it, you put it in there. Now you can put it on high for an hour, which is what I like to do just because I'm kind of impatient and I want to, get things rolling quickly. But generally, just put it on there, set it, turn it to turn it to low for about 8 hours, and you're good to go.
8 hours?
Yes. You could do it at a higher temperature for say 4 hours, and that should work as well. I tend to like to go low and slow. As a general rule, if I have the option, I'm going to take the slower approach to it because I feel like that's going to extract more of the good stuff. Oh, speaking of something that I forgot to mention because we've done this so many times now, just stepping through it, but do not grind your buds before you decarb them. Pick them apart by hand, use a tiny pair of medical scissors, something like that, like you would use for sports tape, that kind of thing. Something along those lines. Snip them down into those little M&M, Skittle-sized pieces. Because putting them in the grinder, you're going to knock off all kinds of trichomes, and that's where the good stuff lives. You want all the trichomes you can possibly get to make it into your infusion. Now, as I was saying, so here is the oil that I started last night. As you can see, so this is what I mean by making sure that you have a bigger container, because if you were trying to drain this, you couldn't do that in the smaller one. So you want just make sure you give yourself plenty of room to work with. It just kind of makes things easier. We're going to just press that gently, and we had a little more time, I would honestly just lift it up out of the oil and let it drip for, 15, 20 minutes, something like that. Just kind of let gravity do its work.
So, and that was 8 hours up right there?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It's almost like a bag of tea, right?
Yeah, really. I mean, that's exactly what you're doing. You are making a big, tea bag of beautiful pain and anxiety relieving love.
And it's immersed in the oil while you're...
Yes, yeah, you want to make sure it's immersed in the oil. The reason I like this mason jar approach with the pantyhose is that you can put it over the top and then you can pour your target medium in over it. Like, so if it was oil, honey, whatever, it's going to filter down through the flour, make sure that everything gets saturated and, no trichomes left behind, so to speak. But, let's see. All right, so I'm just going to put this over here for now, get that out of the way. All right, so now we have our infused oil. Anybody wants to? It's got a nice, it's got a very light flower aroma to it.
Smells like
Smells
a
like
tea.
good. Yeah. So, that'd be real nice for some savory applications, right? Yes. So, all right, we are next. Let's see, we got all that done. All right. We are going to proceed with the making of the pesto. This is not okay. So, quick disclaimer. Since I moved recently, there have been a few pieces of my kitchen that have gone MIA, and the tops to that blender are one of them. So I'm going to be using this little magic bullet. I would prefer to use an actual blender because you really want to just pour the oil in a gentle stream as opposed to, just dumping it, putting it all in at once, hitting blend and hoping for the best. Anytime you're dealing, if you're making a dressing, a salad dressing, or a pesto, if the other thing I was thinking about doing today was making a mayonnaise, a homemade aioli with the olive oil, which is something else you can do. If you've never made your own mayonnaise, if you have a food processor, do it. It is so easy and it is so delicious. It's really good, especially if you're going to use some of this infused oil in it. It's going to just bring a lot of different flavors to the party. It's going to be awesome. It's going to take your sandwich game way up. Okay, so first things first, we got our garlic here. Side note, even though we're going to blend these suckers up, I'm going to crush them ahead of time and just let them kind of hang out. The reason we do this, as I'm crushing, you can kind of see this liquid coming out. So there is a compound in garlic. It's called allicin. It sounds like Allison, but what it is, it's a sulfur compound, and it's a couple different molecules that mix together when you rupture the cellular walls of the garlic. So garlic doesn't smell until you break it, right? When you smash it, that's when you start to get all that pungent aroma, and so that's where a lot of the health benefits that are associated with garlic are derived from. Now, allicin quickly starts to convert into other compounds, and these other compounds are more. Allicin is very heat soluble, so when you start to cook it down, it's going to evaporate quickly. These other compounds are much tougher. They will hang around. So, as a general rule, when you're cooking with garlic and you want to get the most out of it, smash it, cut it up, do whatever you're going to do with it, but let it sit for about 5-10 minutes before you start to cook with it. That's when you're going to get the maximum flavor out of it, and all the other compounds that are good for you, the reasons that we eat garlic, besides just the flavor, that's when you're going to get those benefits out of it. So, next up, okay, I guess we will start with the basil. So, some of you guys may have noticed, I've got a couple basil plants here. I also have a little package of baby spinach. Again, kind of the same thing as blending your olive oil and, in this case, coconut oil, canola oil, vegetable oil, whatever you want to do. You can make a very potent, very strong pesto using just basil, but a lot of times it can be really overpowering, and it's also crazy expensive. Unless you're growing your own basil. Has anyone tried to buy basil from the store lately? marijuana is almost cheaper. It is insanely expensive. Yeah, and so, short of getting your own plants, as I've done, the other thing you want to do really, which I think it makes a better pesto anyways, is you can kind of cut it with a little spinach, with a different kind of green. I like spinach. There are, really, you can use baby greens, some spring mix. You can use all kinds of different things. Arugula is a nice one if you want to add a little kind of peppery bite to your pesto. But spinach, I feel like spinach has some nice kind of background base notes to give to the pesto. So, all right. Thank you for your sacrifice. Put you over there. Bring your buddy over. Alright, got that in there. Add a little bit more spinach. Oh, actually, just to kind of help out with the general weight of the thing. A little Parmesan. So we've got, and I am realizing, so I bought walnuts for this. They did not make it into my bag apparently. Yeah, someone was helping me unload the groceries yesterday, and they took the walnuts and put them up away from the rest of the stuff. So that, trying to be helpful, that has to be what happened. Anyhow, it's all right. So we're gonna add a little Parmesan in there. Parmesan is a nice binder, gives good kind of salty flavor to it besides. But so we got garlic, we've got Parmesan. If I had some walnut pieces, I would have probably thrown about a quarter cup of walnuts into this. This is about a quarter cup of Parmesan, maybe a little more, healthy third of a cup. Gonna add a little salt and pepper. And we're gonna start with a half cup of oil. Oh. Whoops.
Made me tear up a little bit.
I know, right? That is super unfortunate. Always work over a cutting board or other easily removable, cleanable surface. Okay. Alrighty. Got that. Attach this to a blender. So this thing, I managed to convince my wife a little while back that I needed a $200 blender. Yeah,
I need it.
Dude, Ninja blenders are awesome. They're really cool.
Is that what it's called?
Yeah. Yeah, Ninja's got a lot of different, just kind of different fun components. Okay, so we got a basic, blend to start there. That way, you put, in this particular case, if you load up too many greens and whatnot, it's just going to keep everything from blending. So now that we've got the basil base, we've got that started. Gonna add a approximately the same amount, maybe a little bit more of the spinach to the pesto. So you're gonna do pretty much like, well, actually, that's not true. It's gonna be more of a one part basil to 2 parts spinach kind of deal. This point, we're gonna just take a little taste, make sure. Yep. Yeah, that'll work. That'll work. Beautiful. Now, hope you guys don't mind, but I'm a big fan of garlic, so I went kind of heavy on the garlic. Those about 8 cloves of garlic, roughly. Most people would probably put more like 5 or 4 cloves of garlic for something about this size, but you know, gotta keep the vampires away, right? All right, so now with that done and out of the way, we're going to make our Trace bites. There we go. Plug back in.
Is that leftover in the pantyhose waste now?
No, I mean there's still, you can, so when we're doing things like coconut oil, honey, things like that, it's good. You can, steep it in some tea or something like that to kind of get that excess out of there. That would not have been waste yet, but it will eventually. There's still probably little residual things left in there. Some people like to grind it up and put it in, brownies or other things, just use it as an extra kind of, I suppose really you could probably even throw it in your pesto if you wanted to.
Spaghetti sauce.
You could just, yeah.
It's kind of
parsley?
Yeah,
Solids?
yeah, absolutely. You could kind of dry it out and just, sprinkle it, do whatever you want to do with it, really. Why didn't I think, man, we should have blended.
It's not too late.
You guys want to play, let's do a little experiment here with this. Why not? Why not?
Why not?
What's on the bread, bacon?
The baguette? That is what we're about to, that's what we're about to make. We're going to go ahead, though, and add our little, I'm trying to think whether or not we should put a little extra oil in here, but this looks so nice. This actually, I'm pretty happy with how that came out. Yeah, so we're just gonna add all that in here, really kind of supercharge it, Now, here, for this.
If you was doing that at home, would you do it like that? Or would you leave it to the side? 'Cause
I would-
you left it to the side.
I would probably leave it to the side, but after this experiment, who knows, this might actually come out really, really good. So, here, what we're gonna do, just so we have a frame of reference, because I am actually really
I would hope
happy.
last week I fell asleep.
Yeah, 'cause I am really happy with how this pesto turned out. So real quick, so we have a frame of reference, we're just going to put a little of this on some baguettes so everyone can taste, and then we'll proceed on with our experiment and see how it goes. many people we got? 1, 2, 3, 10. Okay.
Please don't be crazy.
Alright. Yeah. We've got our well blended. We went ahead and just threw the herb in there because why not?
Just go for it.
Yeah. Go big or go home, right? Okay. Now let's try this guy, see how that turned out. That was a good idea. That was a good idea. Props, sir. So, yeah, and they say we're not creative. All right. So, for those of you keeping score at home, after we made our infused oil, we went ahead and took the leftover flour, threw it in this pesto along with our spinach, basil, garlic, parmesan, imaginary walnuts, and obviously the oil. So we've got a big, beautiful tub of love there right now. So what we're going to do is get started on the caprese bites. And these are not a true, like a real caprese, just because we're not going to be putting any vinegar on them, because I really want to kind of be paying attention to the pesto as the point of this whole thing. But, you know, hopefully we'll be forgiven for that. I like to kind of get some bias. So right now, what we're going to do is lay out the toast points on a cookie sheet. Now here's a moment where if you're really wanting to supercharge these, you can also, before you throw them in the oven, take a little of your oil or butter. Yep, you can actually, if you've got, you can drizzle it, or if you've got a little paintbrush attachment, such as here. Brush those toast points with a little medicated butter or olive oil.
It is HR.
Yeah.
If only the viewers could see all the drool. All the drool in this room right now.
So much drool. All right. That's here. Put that back here. Should have brought another cutting board, but yeah. Fresh mozzarella.
You make your own.
No, I do not. I have a friend that does, though, and it is out of this world. She makes the mozzarella for DeLuca's Pizzeria down the way.
She's the one that worked at, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, she was the chef at Superior, opened up Superior Bathhouse, and Angela, she is a excellent chef. And yeah, she makes some. I remember she came by the house a while. She's like, "Hey, so I'm trying this new thing," because she had a kid, and so she took some time off work. And she comes from a line of chefs, so it is impossible for her to not work 80 hours a week. So when she had a kid and she wasn't able to do that, she started all these insane projects, and one of them was, I'm gonna make mozzarella. I'm just gonna learn how to make mozzarella. And it was the best thing I've ever had. It's amazing. Just constantly hitting her up with just, hey man, you got any more of that mozzarella? You making mozzarella soon? So, no.
Cheese Jones.
No, dude, it was so bad. Yeah, she'd bring it over. It was nice and warm, and oh man, dude, so good, so good. All right, so we got our toast points bathed in our delicious infused oil, topped with a little fresh mozzarella. We're gonna toss them in the toaster oven here. About 7 to 10 minutes, something like that. Let's see here, we're 350. We're gonna turn it up to 375 and just let those go for a few minutes. In the meantime, we will slice up our tomato, get the rest of the area cleared and ready to go.
Perfect timing. It takes us about 7 minutes to smoke the roll, so it's perfect.
Hey, there you go. So, while we're waiting, you're playing at home, perfect amount of time to go take a safety break.
What about the munchies?
What about the munchies?
Yeah, will you get them on edibles?
Yeah. I mean, I find that it depends on
The strain,
the strain that you use. But yeah, there's definitely that is a problem. So you always want to have non-medicated stuff, nearby. I tell a story. I had the first time a friend of mine was back in Colorado, had never messed with cannabis, anything like that, and he got dosed accidentally. Some cookies were made and given to him by his wife. His wife knew what was up, but he didn't. And so he ate the first cookie, like, oh, that was really good. He's what you would call a cookie monster. He's a real little dude who just has a crazy metabolism, likes to eat everything. So he ate the first cookie. Oh, that was good. Smashed the second one. They were good-sized cookies. There was a lot in them. He was high for nearly 3 days. So this brings us to another important point. How your body handles the THC, very different than when you're smoking and inhaling it. This is an important point as far as when you're making edibles for yourself and knowing how to properly dose and things like that. If you're making food that is, let's say you're using just like a tincture to infuse your foods, and you're doing like hard candies, gummies, things like that are low in fat but high in sugar, they will hit your body harder and faster, but then they're gone. Like 30 minutes or so, and that real high, that's gone. You do something with a high fat content, it's going to take longer for your body to process, but it's going to stick around a lot longer too. And so it's important when you're thinking about dosing, and we'll get into this here in just a second. I guess we can right now. But there are a few calculators that you can download for your phone to help you calculate dosage, things like that. 5 milligrams for most people is approximate to a toke. A puff on, out of a bowl or a joint, something along those lines. So think about it like this, and normally it's like about 2 hours, I think is what they say, for something that's in your, like alcohol and marijuana both kind of exit your body. You start coming down after, around 2 hours or so after they take effect. So you got to think about that. So if you eat something that has 30 or 40 milligrams in it, it's going to be like you smoked a whole joint, took some wicked bong rips, whatever, but they stay with you for 8 hours. So it's and it affects your body a little bit differently, There's definitely a lot more pain relief and that sort of thing. There's the other important thing, though, the reason that CBD is so fantastic is it can actually, if you do over medicate, because that's, you know, the difficult thing, right, with edibles is you eat some and you gotta wait an hour, sometimes 2 hours before you really start to notice the effect. And maybe you ate some more or whatever, but if you overdosed, if you over-medicated, you can take some CBD to come down. The CBD counteracts the effects of the THC within your brain, kind of, you know, it's like that calm friend at the party that, woo, yeah, let's go, we're going to Mexico, let's, you know, so if they're like, hey buddy, hey, let's just go, let's sit down on the couch for a little bit first, let's just chill out.
So what happened if you did both at the same time?
They kind of equal each other out. So
just make things a little mellower, maybe more rounded. But
exactly, it's going to be a more rounded, kind of mellower experience.
Yeah.
And the other thing, it'll definitely, so that's why I highly recommend if you're making edibles, especially for like pain and sleep management, that sort of thing, that you definitely include CBD into your edibles for that, because that will, you know, you get a good indica or something heavy indica that's going to be sort of a sedative, and then you mix the CBD in there, and that's just going to make everything. The CBD already calms people down, it helps with nerves, it helps regulate your blood pressure, all these other great things. And so depending on what you pair that with, you have a lot of, you know, you have some really powerful, potent effects. All right, looks like our
Can I ask you a question about decarbing CBDs?
Yes.
You got to do that at a slightly higher temperature, like sativa's 245 or 6 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
Would you go up another 20 degrees or so to decarb CBDs?
Yeah, CBDs you want to decarb around 280 degrees.
Okay.
That's the sweet spot for the CBD. All right, there we go. Our toast points are nice and beautiful. Now we're just gonna lay this little piece of tomato. And just a little. I'm a fan of salt and pepper on the tomatoes. It's something that they do all over Italy, and since they can, you know, it's kind of the birthplace of these things, figure they probably know exactly what they're doing. Just a little bit, right? Nah, just a little. Something. No, I have not.
It's on the list. It's on the list.
It is on the list. It is on the list. All right, now. Oh. All right. Oh. So, another new thing that we learned today, that magic bullet kind of thing, that smoothie maker, whatever, that attachment, does a really good job of blending this pesto up.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, you're good. Makes a nice, creamy. Of course, I'm sure the obscene amount of Parmesan we put in there didn't hurt.
I forgot about that.
Yeah. All right. And there you have it. Let's put a little more there. Oh. That's right, it's the wifey. My co-pilot hauls my butt out of trouble, just like R2. All right. All right, guys, and there we go. Come get some. Yeah.
Oh, it's beautiful, isn't it?
Hey, guys, have a great week.